The Silent Frontier. The colony of Lyra 7 was never meant to be important. Situated on the outer rim of the Andromeda Arm, it was little more than a research outpost that had gradually grown into a modest settlement of 30,000 souls. Scientists, engineers, farmers, and their families had built a life here, far from the bustling core worlds of humanity. The planet's twin moons cast a silvery glow over the modular habitation domes and hydroponic farms that dotted the rusty landscape. Commander Elena Rice stood at the colony's main observation deck, watching the sunset paint the horizon in shades of amber and crimson. After 15 years of service with the Colonial Defense Force, this quiet posting was supposed to be her last before retirement. Lyra 7 had a skeleton security detail, 20 officers and a handful of automated defense satellites. That was all they'd ever needed. Commander, Lieutenant Chen's voice crackled through her comm. Long-range scanners have picked up something unusual. Rice frowned. Unusual how? Multiple objects dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of our system. Configuration unknown. Something cold settled in Raya's stomach. Lyra 7 received supply ships once every 3 months, and the next wasn't due for another 6 weeks. Alert status. I want all personnel at their stations. By the time Rice reached the command center, the objects had resolved into ships, massive, angular vessels with predatory silhouettes that reminded her of oceanic predators from Earth. They were unlike anything in humanity's naval registry. 15 ships, Chen reported, his face pale. Largest is approximately 3 kilometers in length. Any response to hails? None. Commander, the first blast hit without warning. One of Lyra 7's defense satellites simply vanished in a flash of light. Then another. Then a third. They're targeting our defenses, Rise realized aloud. Sound the evacuation alarm. Get everyone to the bunkers. The colonial emergency system blared to life, but it was already too late. The alien vessels, for what else could they be, had entered orbit and were deploying smaller craft. Dozens, then hundreds of them, descending toward the colony's main habitation sectors. What are they? Someone whispered. The question was answered when the communication system suddenly activated. A harsh, guttural voice filled the command center, speaking through what had to be a translator. Attention human settlement. You now belong to the Vraxian Collective. Surrender all resources and prepare for processing. Reyes leaned forward to respond. This is Commander Elena Reyes of the Earth Colonial Defense Force. You are attacking a peaceful scientific outpost. We have no quarrel with you. A sound like grinding stones, laughter, perhaps, answered her. Your quarrel is irrelevant. Your defenses are inadequate. Your location is valuable. These are the only factors of significance. The transmission cut off as explosions rocked the colony. The main habitat dome's integrity alarms shrieked as breaches formed in its outer shell. They're deploying ground forces, Shen reported, his voice steady despite the fear evident in his eyes. Humanoid, heavily armored. Using energy weapons. For the next 6 hours, Lyra 7 fought with everything it had. The colonists, many of whom had never fired a weapon before, took up arms alongside Raya's security team. They'd barricaded corridors, rigged improvised explosives, and tried desperately to get the most vulnerable civilians to the emergency bunkers deep underground. But it wasn't enough. The Vraxians moved with ruthless efficiency, their armor impervious to most of the colonists' weapons. They didn't take prisoners. Anyone who resisted was killed on the spot. Those who surrendered were herded into groups and marched toward the alien landing craft. By nightfall, half the colony was in ruins. Emergency lighting cast eerie shadows across blood-spattered corridors as Reyes and the remains of her defense force retreated to the command center. Status report, she demanded, binding a wound on her arm with a strip of fabric torn from her uniform. We've lost contact with sectors 3 through 7, Chen replied, his once pristine uniform now torn and blackened with soot. Estimated civilian casualties at 8,000 plus, another 5,000 taken by the Vraxians. Reyes closed her eyes briefly. The evacuation ships. 3 managed to launch with about 2,000 colonists. The rest were destroyed on the ground. The commander nodded slowly. And the long-range transmitter? Still operational. We've been broadcasting distress calls since the attack began. But Chen let the sentence trail off. They both knew the truth. Lyra 7 was too far from any other human settlement. The nearest military outpost was 2 weeks away at maximum FTL speed. By then, there would be nothing left to save. Keep broadcasting, Reyes ordered anyway. And prepare the quantum data packet. If we can't get help, we can at least make sure Earth knows what happened here. She moved to the communications array and activated the emergency recording system. Her face, streaked with dirt and blood, looked back at her from the monitor. This is Commander Elena Reyes of Lyra 7 Colony. We are under attack by a previously unknown alien force that identifies itself as the Vraxian Collective. They struck without warning or provocation. Our defenses have failed. Most of our population is either dead or captured. She paused, swallowing hard. If anyone receives this message, be advised. The Vraxians possess technology significantly beyond our current capabilities. Their intentions appear to be resource acquisition and possible territorial expansion. They show no interest in diplomacy or mercy. Another explosion shook the command center, closer this time. Dust rained from the ceiling. We don't expect rescue, Reyes continued, her voice growing firmer. We are too far from reinforcements. But Earth needs to know what's coming. Prepare. Strengthen the outer colonies. Don't let what happened here. The door to the command center buckled under a massive impact. Then again, metal groaned and twisted. Send it, Reyes ordered Chen, drawing her sidearm. Now. The lieutenant's fingers flew across the console as the quantum packet, containing everything they had learned about the Vraxians, compiled and prepared for transmission. The door gave way with a shriek of tearing metal, and armored figures poured through. For Earth, Reyes shouted, opening fire alongside the handful of defenders left in the command center. Her shots pinged harmlessly off the alien armor. The return fire did not miss. As darkness closed in around her, Commander Elena Reyes had one final thought. No one is coming. No one even knows we're here. The Vraxian commander, a towering figure with mottled gray skin and 4 glowing eyes, surveyed the conquered colony with satisfaction. His subordinate approached, armor still smoking from the final assault. The settlement is secure, war leader. All resistance has been eliminated. Processing of resources and captives is underway. Any transmissions escaped. One small data packet, primitive quantum encryption. Inconsequential. The war leader's mouthparts clicked in amusement. These humans are soft creatures. Their technology is unrefined. Their defenses laughable. Should we prepare for possible retaliation? Their government may send forces. By the time any human ships arrive, we will be long gone with our spoils. And should they be foolish enough to pursue us? The war leader gestured to the fleet orbiting above. We will educate them on the futility of resistance, as we have done with a dozen species before them. Little did the Vraxian know that the quantum data packet had indeed reached its destination, but not the one Reyes had intended. The unusual radiation from the nearby star had altered its trajectory, sending it along a different path through subspace, a path that led directly to the largest human battle fleet assembled in the last 50 years. The thunder of humanity. Admiral Kazuo Takeda was not a patient man. At 63, with salt and pepper hair cropped close to his skull and a perpetual scowl etched into his features, he had spent 40 years in the Earth Defense Force Navy and had earned the right to his impatience. The endless diplomatic mission he had been assigned to was, in his opinion, a waste of a perfectly good battle group. The United Earth Expeditionary Fleet, 14 warships including the flagship UES Thunderchild, had been touring the frontier colonies in a show of force meant to reassure the outer settlements and deter potential aggressors. In reality, it was political theater, and everyone knew it. "Admiral," his communications officer called. "We've received an encrypted transmission. Unusual format. Appears to be a quantum data packet." Takeda raised an eyebrow. "Source: unknown, sir. Not one of ours, but it's definitely using colonial defense protocols. Put it through to my ready room." 5 minutes later, the bridge crew jumped as Takeda's voice bellowed over the intercom. "All ships, battle stations. Navigator, plot immediate jump to the Lyra system. Weapons, I want all systems hot the moment we exit hyperspace. This is not a drill." The fleet moved with practiced efficiency, transitioning from diplomatic parade to war footing in minutes. As the flagship accelerated toward its jump point, Takeda addressed his assembled officers. "Approximately 9 hours ago, the research colony on Lyra 7 was attacked by an unknown alien force, calling themselves the Vraxian Collective." He played the recording of Commander Reyes' final transmission. "Intelligence suggests these Vraxians are still on site, harvesting resources and processing captives. Though what that means, we don't know." "Sir," his XO interjected, "Lyra 7 is beyond our operational parameters. We don't have authorization for—" "I'm aware, Commander." Takeda cut him off. "I've already transmitted our change in course to High Command. By the time they order us to stand down, we'll already be engaged. I'll face the court-martial later." He looked around at their faces, some uncertain, others resolute. 30,000 civilians lived on Lyra 7. Our people. They sent a call for help, not expecting anyone to answer. But we will answer. We will show these Vraxians and anyone else watching that humanity protects its own, no matter the distance, no matter the odds. The hyperspace jump took 22 hours. 22 hours during which Takeda and his staff studied the limited information they had on the Vraxians, devising tactics based on educated guesses and incomplete data. When they emerged in the Lyra system, the scene that greeted them confirmed their worst fears. The Vraxian ships, 15 massive vessels, orbited Lyra 7 like vultures, smaller craft shuttling between the surface and the larger ships, presumably carrying looted materials and captives. "They haven't detected us yet," Takeda's tactical officer reported. "Their sensors appear focused planetside." "Good," Takeda nodded. "Deploy the fleet in formation theta. Launch stealth drones for targeting data. And open a channel." Moments later, his weathered face appeared on the view screens of every Vraxian vessel. "Attention Vraxian forces. This is Admiral Kazuo Takeda of the United Earth Expeditionary Fleet. You have attacked a human settlement without provocation, killed our people, and stolen our resources. Surrender immediately, return all captives, and prepare to face justice for your actions." There was a long pause before the response came, the same grinding stone laughter that Reyes had heard. "Human Admiral, your arrival is unexpected but irrelevant. Your fleet is outnumbered, your technology inferior. Depart now, and we may spare your lives." Takeda's expression didn't change. "I don't negotiate with pirates or murderers. And you've made a critical error in your assessment." "What error, human?" "You think we're outnumbered." At his signal, the human fleet executed its plan. While the Vraxians had been focused on Takeda's transmission, 6 smaller vessels had broken formation, using the system's asteroid belt to mask their approach. Now they emerged behind the Vraxian fleet, weapons already firing. Simultaneously, the main fleet accelerated forward, but instead of engaging at long range as the Vraxians expected, they drove straight toward the alien vessels at maximum speed. "Kinetic impactors away," the weapons officer announced as the fleet released thousands of hypervelocity projectiles. Simple tungsten rods accelerated to near-relativistic speeds. Against shields designed to deflect energy weapons, the primitive projectiles proved devastatingly effective, overwhelming the Vraxian defenses through sheer volume. 3 enemy ships erupted in flames before they could even begin evasive maneuvers. "Launch all fighters," Takeda ordered. "Target their engines and weapons first." Disable rather than destroy when possible. We want those captives back. The space around Lyra 7 transformed into a chaotic battlefield. Human ships, smaller but more maneuverable than their Vraxian counterparts, darted between the lumbering alien vessels, striking with precision, while the Vraxians struggled to bring their more powerful weapons to bear. "They're targeting our flagship," the tactical officer warned as several Vraxian vessels turned toward the Thunderchild. "As expected," Takeda replied calmly. "Execute Maneuver Bravo 6. The Thunderchild suddenly cut its engines and rotated on its axis, presenting its heavily armored underside to the incoming Vraxian fire. As the aliens concentrated their attack on the apparently vulnerable ship, the rest of the human fleet closed in from multiple vectors, tearing into the exposed flanks of the Vraxian formation. On the planet below, the remaining colonists watched in awe as new stars seemed to blink into existence in the daylight sky, the flashes of exploding ships visible even from the surface. Landing craft away, the operations officer reported. Marine teams deploying to secure the colony and rescue captives. The battle raged for 3 hours. The Vraxians, while technologically superior in some ways, had clearly never faced an opponent that fought with humanity's particular brand of calculated recklessness. Their rigid formations and by-the-book tactics crumbled against Takeda's unorthodox approach. "War leader," a Vraxian officer reported, voice tinged with disbelief. "We have lost 8 vessels. 3 more are severely damaged. The humans are boarding our processing ships." The war leader, who had been so confident just hours earlier, stared at the tactical display in shock. "Impossible. They are primitives. Their weapons are inferior." "They are not fighting as expected," the officer replied. "They use minimal energy weapons. Their projectiles are crude but effective." "And their soldiers?" The officer hesitated. "What about their soldiers?" the war leader demanded. "They fight without fear. Many have sustained injuries that would incapacitate our warriors, yet they continue to advance, and they are prioritizing the rescue of captives over their own safety." For the first time in his long career of conquest, the war leader felt uncertainty gnaw at him. These humans weren't behaving like a rational species should. They had rushed headlong into a numerically superior force, with inferior technology, yet somehow they were winning. "Order all ships to disengage," he finally commanded. "Abandon the surface teams. We must regroup and reassess." But it was too late. The human Marines had already secured the Vraxian landing zones and were systematically clearing the colony of alien forces. In space, the remaining Vraxian ships found themselves surrounded, their escape routes cut off by the smaller, faster human vessels. "The Vraxian flagship is hailing us," the communications officer announced. Takeda nodded. On screen, the war leader's alien features filled the view screen. "Human Admiral, it appears we have miscalculated." "That's one word for it," Takeda replied coldly. "We propose a cessation of hostilities. We will withdraw from this system and—" "No," Takeda interrupted. "You will surrender your ships. You will release all captives. You will face justice for the lives you've taken. Those are my terms. And if we refuse—" Takeda leaned forward. "Then we will continue this battle to its conclusion. You've seen what we can do now. Ask yourself if you want to test us further." 6 hours after the human fleet's arrival, the last Vraxian ship surrendered. Marine teams found thousands of colonists still alive in the alien processing chambers, traumatized but recovering. Commander Elena Reyes was discovered in the colony's medical bay, grievously wounded but somehow still alive, having been left for dead by the Vraxians. As Takeda walked through the ruined colony alongside his medical and engineering teams, a young colonist approached him, eyes wide. "You came," she said simply. "Commander Reyes said no one would come, that we were too far away." Takeda knelt down to her level. "Distance doesn't matter. You're human. You're one of us. And humanity will always answer when its people call for help." Word of the battle spread quickly throughout human space. The quantum data packet that had reached Takeda's fleet had also scattered echoes across multiple frequencies, eventually reaching Earth itself. What had started as a shocking attack became a rallying point, a demonstration that even the furthest human outpost could count on the protection of the fleet. As for the Vraxians, their first encounter with humanity would not be their last. But the story of how a seemingly insignificant colony had been avenged by a fleet that wasn't supposed to be there spread throughout the galaxy, reaching the ears of other species who had been watching humanity's expansion with calculating eyes. The message was clear: humanity protected its own, no matter the distance, no matter the odds, and anyone who threatened a human settlement should be prepared for the thunder that would follow. In her hospital bed aboard the Thunderchild, Commander Rice listened as Admiral Takeda explained how they had received her message and responded. "It was luck," he admitted. "A 1 in a million chance that your quantum packet reached us instead of Earth." Rice shook her head weakly. "Not luck, Admiral. Humanity." And in that moment, both the veteran commander and the battle-hardened admiral understood a fundamental truth. In a vast, often hostile universe, humanity's greatest strength wasn't its technology or its tactics. It was its unwavering determination to never leave anyone behind.